And this two-part message today comes to you courtesy of my business, which is called the Community of the Beloved Family. And the mission of this business is to help wake up society to the power of divine family, both in marriage and in the family of man. So, it'll be interesting to see what's coming out for this. So I talked to you all this past summer numerous times about all the energies that were coming into us, starting with the full moons that we had in April and May and June. And then we had the summer solstice, and then in July or August, the solar eclipse. So there was a lot of powerful energy events that were happening in our world, and that energy comes down and it affects us. And it helps us, it's there for us to connect to our inner ascension, so we can connect to the outer ascension. I also, during that time, talked about the events that would probably happen during the rest of the months, which is part of the growth that's happened to us, and we still have a couple more months left of this year. And to really look at all of what's going on is what's happening for our own inner growth, our own ascension. At that time, I mentioned also that it would be growing into the energy of the month of October, which would be the month of freedom or chaos, and that everything is up for healing. Well, look at what's been happening lately for healing. Superstorms in two parts of our country and in the island south of us, wildfires all around the western part of the country, and the situation in Las Vegas and other places. As metaphysicians, we need to remember when things like this happen that the law of attraction is working and that nothing happens by accident. There is a higher purpose for everything, and we want to be able to get into that. When tragedies and horrific events occur, we all need to fill up our hearts with love and support for ourselves and for all of humanity, because everybody's going through a lot. And we need to reach out with our own love and our own presence to the presence of Source. So I sent an email out to you last Tuesday about the events in Las Vegas that Spirit, did you all receive that? That Spirit gave me some insight on it, and there was some other information I was given to give to you today about that. The recent terror event in Las Vegas is tearing at the hearts of many people around the country. And it is another moment in time for further looking at how it can be undermining the very fragile fabric of society itself. People are hurt and hurting around this world. But we need to remember there is only the one. And we are all connected with that one. And that it is time for the darkness to come up to the surface, to be healed, because the light is pushing it. I talked 2 weeks ago about how mass consciousness thoughts will attract weather to us. And Mark talked about that a little bit the Sunday after that. Well, it's the same for events like Las Vegas. There is no separation. Our mass consciousness is at work in everything. And everything outside of what's going on is a reflection of what's going on inside of us. Therefore, I would state that if you're feeling sad about the situation, that's really sad about it, it may be a sign that you have a lot of sadness inside that you need to deal with and to look at. If you feel anger about what's happened, it may be time to look at where am I carrying anger inside, because when you don't, it adds to the energy of sadness and anger and everything else that other people might be feeling. So our job as metaphysicians is to wake up and clear out these old emotions and these old thoughts within us. During this time, too, we can also see that there is a repetitive gun-based trauma being inflicted upon the souls of America and so many other people worldwide. Every day we have many people that are dying at gunpoint. I just read an article the other day about how toddlers are shooting people on a weekly basis. And it said, on an average, someone gets shot by an American toddler a little more frequently than once a week because of guns laying around the home. Again, we could feel a lot of anger for that, but we need to stop for a moment, take a breath, and what does this mean on a higher level for us to understand? There was another study I read a few days ago that revealed how Americans mistrust one another, and there's a reason why I'm bringing these all up to that I'll get to. This study examined 4 negative attitudes towards 4 groups: atheists, conservative Christians, Jews, and Muslims. And what it stated when they did this study is that evangelical people look down on the values of atheists. Non-religious people fear that conservative Christians want to limit their freedom. People worry that Muslims pose a threat to their physical safety. And we've seen lots of attacks on Muslims because of that. And others believe that Jews want to limit their freedom and have inferior values. So in short, we have a lot of groups, identity groups, that are awfully concerned about one another and have judgments and blame and attack for one another and not seeing how it affects them. So what this does, in other words, this mass consciousness has effect because we can feel the energy of thoughts and emotions. That's part of our mass consciousness. When you get groups of people together thinking a certain way, it attracts energy to them. Accordingly to that, humanity can and do play a role in the formation and the effect, as I mentioned before, of what everyone considers to be natural disasters. We are one with weather and everything that's going on. There's another storm that's hitting us on the Florida coast right now on this weekend. And so we have to look at our own thoughts, and it's not just human weather disasters, but situations like Las Vegas. There's really not a lot of difference. Some people may look at the external of it and say, well, that's different here than here. But we have to look at it internally. There's a lot going on. Especially, we want to look at stuff like this happening at times of polarization, when we feel more separate from another one. Political upheaval that's going on in our country and in other places. We've been having a lot of this polarization, and just like the study that I mentioned, some people may say, oh, that's just normal or whatever, but it has an effect on us, beloveds. It really does. It's all energy. And so, when all this happens, is it any wonder that we have events like Orlando or the Baptist Church in South Carolina and many more that happen because of people's judgments and fears about themselves and one another, that they go out and act on it? Just like I talked to you about last Sunday, and how we have to really connect to and love these kinds of people, all kinds of people, to be able to connect to them as our neighbors. But every single day, we have more grief, sadness, and anger that's poured into this planetary thought body. And I say that one word because all there is the one. There's no separation between us and any of these people. It is one mind. And we're pouring fear into it and not love. This free-floating anxiety is causing unconscious fear to expand. And then the vibration of all that energy and density is moving in a downward and an upward spiral because we want to get the darkness out of our life so God's light can come up and we start living in a society that is love and oneness with one another. In the United States, when things like this happen, we have politicians that are gridlocked in a war of words about how they're going to deal with this tragedy. On the other side, we may have other people, TV celebrities or other ones, who are actually sharing authentic grief. So we have a lot of different things going on. But we need to be reminded that the darkness is up because God's light is pushing it up to be healed. So at that moment, we all need to receive and give to one another a gift of love and reassurance. And that's what I wanted to do here with all of you today. To all of you who will accept the sacred intention that I'm talking about into your heart, I wish that all of you would be a gift of presence for those around you. Everybody needs to feel it. And this is what we see happen when these tragedies occur. People are there immediately to help one another. It is a sign of oneness and love and presence, but there's more that we can do. Problems are simply unable to be solved at the same level that created the time of tragedy. What I've said before is that the same mind that created the energy cannot solve it. It needs something different. That means you need to step aside, get out of the fear and the ego and get into God's mind. There will not ever be the right amount of police protection or other type of protection that can resolve these distractions that have allowed such abuse to be afflicted upon all of us until we start changing who we are all being in our lives. Now, we may sit there and say, well, I'm not a part of that. But anytime we have a judgment about ourselves, anytime we have a judgment or a fear thought about someone else, we are adding to the mass consciousness. That's why it's taken a lot of work for us to come here with like-minded people, to hear talks, to read, and to say, I really got to get out of this. I've got to connect to God and to the light and to the love and start looking at everything in a higher way of what it's about. So I'm not connecting to the mass consciousness of fear. What we need to be is to anchor our ascended heart. And first, that demands that we be honest with ourselves. I've talked a lot about ascension, that we're moving into that time, and we have to start it within ourselves. So first of all, by being honest with ourselves, what I'm saying is that if you feel anger in your body at something, take responsibility for it. Don't let it take you over. Don't let it get out of you and expand by words that you say or actions, because that's what's happening. Or if you're feeling sadness, it's the same thing, because these emotions are simply signals for you to feel something, to change something. They don't define who you are, but they do some people, because they let it. Emotions are energy in motion. So as a master in physical form, which we all are, this spiritual master in our physical body, we have the capacity to allow the movement of energy to be expressed in so many different ways, in more positive ways, so that we avoid contaminating our cells and our tissues and the lives of others when we say things or do things to other people. There are many safe ways to express grief, anger, and fear. With my clients that I do, I tell them, if you're feeling this stuff, scream it out. Get a pillow and yell into it. If you're feeling sadness, lay down and cry. Don't stuff it inside like our society teaches us, because then it's in there and it builds up and it adds to what's going on. So, as a result, I want to share with you, because of what I'm saying, my insight to this person who did this act in Las Vegas. The law enforcement people in Las Vegas are trying to find out a cause for it. And this is what happens every time. There's a plane crash, there's this. What's the reason? What was the cause for it? What's the motive? But they're not going to get to it because they're looking at it in the wrong way, in my mind. Based on the work that I've done in the program before and learning about family constructs and family patterns and what I'm talking about with our emotions, I would say his motive was this. His father was in prison when they were young. I don't know if you had read those reports. But when he and his brother were younger, his father was arrested and in prison for auto theft and some other things, I think including murder, if I remember right. But he escaped from prison. He was on the top 10 list for a number of times before he got arrested again and caught. Now, his sons were young at that time. What sort of effect do you think that sort of event happened on the kids? They took in, being the innocent children they have, that something was wrong with their dad, and they probably learned how to stuff their emotions inside. They probably felt some anger, they felt some sadness at what was going on, but they stuffed it inside. They didn't work with it, because that's what we all did. And since this guy was the oldest one and probably took it on more as the oldest son, buried his emotions inside. So here's our body, which is the body of communication. And what happens is it doesn't want to hold on to that stuff. So I'm sure he probably felt those stuff inside, didn't know how to deal with them except to get his anger out. And because he didn't have emotional controls, like I mentioned last week to you guys, he found that way to do it. Now that's something for you to consider. But I think if they start looking at that, we might see a better answer as to why this happened and why I'm talking about this, why all of us need to wake up to ourselves, to old emotions that we may be stored inside from our childhood that we're carrying around, old thoughts to look at. We have support here. Thank God we come to a church, but there are so many people that don't have that support. They're out there by themselves. There are divine souls as well in this physical body, but they're going through all the traumatic events and part of the darkness that's coming up right now. So we want to hold this for ourselves and for one another. So the key is to honor your emotions. Express the truth of your experience. Stop stuffing them inside your body. And then lift yourself into a more ascended point of view and expand your energy into love and safety and divine connection to one another. You have a choice, beloveds. You can use every event as a reminder to return to love, or you can spiral into reactive behavior and lock in your coarser frequencies and emotions. The choice is yours. Inner peace is always realized when we are able to transmit our human experience into our ascended presence. So, beloveds, we need to remember that every event that happens around us, we are part of. We are not separate. Doesn't matter where it's happening on the globe. Every event is a gift. Everything is a teacher to us from the universe to assist us to be able to choose to grow into more compassion and love. And so we are being offered a moment to ascend within ourselves. And as a collective, we're at a time when both the darkness and the light are expanding. Polarity is growing in our world, and the opportunity to grow has never been greater than it is right now. It's a powerful moment to fully claim the freedom of choice, to start extending love to ourselves, to our neighbors, regardless of where they live on this precious planet. So from time to time, wisdom is expressed from our leaders, and I want to share two of them who stood up to express themselves in the best way they could at the time of their worldly incarnations. Number one, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Anybody know who that was? Martin Luther King. Second one, unless a man is a master of his soul, all other kinds of mastery amount to little. Theodore Roosevelt. And that's very true also. So the second part of this message is the wake-up call. So I tell you, beloveds, it's all time right now for you to know that love is in your hearts and it is your power in your life. It is a matter of expressing that love and taking it to the top of the ladder. Give yourselves the gift of yourselves to everyone around you. All of you have gifts to give to one another. We got to stop holding ourselves back. We got to stop separating through judgment. Give it to everyone around you, and even the distances that are more than a foot away from you, across the world. Everybody can stand receiving this because we're all one. And for doing that, you are supplying the utmost care and assistance to those who are in need for help. And those who are choosing to go to another place, they may feel better than they are right now. If we saw that and helped everybody to hold the place for them to release the pain they carry around, our society would be experiencing so much more love. It's a time for all of us to look around and see what's going on in the everyday wonders of our earth. It's time for us all to reach out and touch someone who seems at a loss of what to do or where to turn. And all it takes is for us to feel the difference, is to touch them with a feeling of love, like I said the title was. Touch one another with a feeling of love. Smile in a way that represents the love that you feel. And as you reach out with the thought of love and assistance in your heart, you cannot help but assist those people in making moves that they know will help them to get out of the place that they're in. It can give them cause to pause for a moment and realize, oh, I'm not alone. There are other people here. Because there are a lot of people that feel alone. There are one in many who are in dire straits right now, and with one direct movement forward, they will find out with help that they're able to make another step and another step, and we want to help them because it's helping us as well. And when we do that, it will help bring them a new thought of how to make their life better. They will begin to feel stronger and more in line with what they want, and that they are being helped by all of creation. What a wondrous thing to know, that we're being helped by all of creation. They will recognize the feelings that come to them from the love that you send to all of life on this planet and beyond. And so as you do this, you will recognize your own power. You will see that you are more in strength than you notice that you are. You will be able to move forward in your own lives and make a difference. And all it takes is one person to do that, to move something different in the world. You. Make a change in yourself and watch what can happen in the rest of the world. Take a deep breath, beloveds. Follow your heart in the next step, and it will be a loving change to all of life because you have the power. You can be the example to everyone else out there so that they can recognize they have the power in their life. They don't have to go out and create upset and negativity about other people. It's time to recognize that each of you have the truth inside. You are the power in your lives and all around you. I know that. I see it. I feel it in myself. I feel it in each of you. And I love you. And that's why I'm here to tell you this, that we are one. And we have the power to create the love that is in the steps of creation, in freedom, peace, and joy in our lives and others. So, beloveds, love is all there is, and we are that love. Namaste. Any comments before we go? Yes?
I would just like to express appreciation for you sending that message out. as it turns out, I read the message, and my brother called me right after that. He doesn't practice in any faith or anything. He's kind of a fallen away Catholic. We both went to parochial school together. And he was pretty flabbergasted by the whole thing, because he gets into that. He gets into that outward tragedy type thing. So I read what you wrote to him, and it really helped him out. He actually ended up kind of crying through part of it and just saying, God, that's beautiful, and that's the way to think about it and stuff like that. So it was kind of an intro for me to show him some new thought ways of looking at things like this.
That's great. That's what I'm talking about, how we can, by ourselves, share that with somebody else and help them move within themselves. So good. Yeah, it came to me during meditation in the morning. Spirit said, write to the congregation. So I said, okay, that's... Anyway, any other comments, questions before we go to meditation? Okay, Christine?